Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for attending this webinar this morning and making the time to attend it. I'm assuming if you have signed up for it that you're probably quite busy, but I don't know very many small business owners that aren't ever pressed for time. Moving on to today's panelist, me. I don't look like that very much anymore. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I wore that top. It is one of my favorite tops, but nowadays I'm mostly in a hoodie and leggings. I have been fully embraced the I don't need to leave my house uniform in the last few months. So this is me, Tamsin Jefferson Harvey. I run Seed Accounting Solutions. We are a small business ourselves, and therefore we know what it is like to run a small business. We know the pains and the roller coaster that is involved with running a small business. We mostly specialize in micro businesses, so that's the sort of smallest part of the small businesses, and we're really passionate about helping people sort of run their businesses a little more effectively. It's less about, I mean, obviously we always do a bit of tax planning and all of that, but actually there's a limit to what we can do there, especially in the sort of micro businesses. So what we're really focusing on is actually, the mindset and the sort of skills and qualities that you need to successfully run a small business, especially in those early days. So that's me. I've put my email there, so if anyone has any questions after the webinar and you don't already have it, you can now contact me by email. So that is me, and these are our core values at Seed Accounting Solutions. So I actually gathered my team together in, it was June 2019, and we sat down to work out what was really important to us. We have our own sort of core values that we live into as a team internally, and that we also ensure we promote externally as well. But these are actually the sort of main focus of our delivery, is to educate, support, and empower. And that's the reason that we deliver these webinars. We don't keep them only for our clients. We deliver these webinars to anybody for free. And we believe that it's really important that small business owners have access to the information that they need, regardless of their size, regardless of their budget. So that's where we are now. So this webinar will hopefully educate you, it will support you and help you to run your business a bit better, and it will also empower you to make the decisions that you need to do to run your successful business. So I hope that makes sense. And here's the thought of the day. The irony is not lost on me that if you're here now, you've already reclaimed some of your time, because it's the people who aren't going to be here that probably need to hear these messages more. The people who can't attend, they can't make 45 minutes in their week to attend something that's going to help improve them. So first of all, well done for being here. I appreciate you making this choice, and I will endeavour to give you as much value as I can throughout this session. So first of all, let's just consider this quote: either run the day or the day runs you. And that basically reflects the today's content, or the theme, I suppose, for today's content. And also just a quick disclaimer that the information in this webinar is entirely educational. It's general in nature. It's no substitute for tailored advice specific to your particular circumstances. Every small business is different. Every person is different. So please do not hold me accountable for anything. This is very much a general educational webinar, and please do bear that in mind. There's going to be some bits that are relevant and not relevant to you. So first of all, we are going onto the agenda. So this is what I'm going to cover in today's session. We're going to discuss why we will always be busy and look at some mindsets that can help us reclaim our time. I'm prone to this. People will always be asking me how I am, and I'm always like, oh, I'm busy. I'm always busy. But actually, it's not busy in a bad way necessarily. And I make sure that I prioritize my own time. So we're also going to identify where time is being wasted and discuss some practical ways to free up your time. And obviously, sort of practical things that you can do is always the best thing that you can do from a webinar, is actually something that you can take away and actually act on. We're going to discuss your next steps and answer any questions you may have. And that's it, really. Super quick, hopefully. all done by 10:45, maybe a little bit before 11. So first of all, I'm going to try something that I've never tried before, and I'm going to run a poll on a really cool little tool called Mentimeter. So I'm going to test one. They should start popping up on their screen in a nice little word cloud. Theoretically. There we go. So if you can enter in a couple of words. Oh, there we go. We got them coming through. Well done. Excellent. Stressed, overwhelmed, nervous, on edge. Whoa. Oh, we've got loads now. Oh, look, grumpy, anxious, stressed, agitated. There's lots of different things here, and I'm sure that we can all relate to how you feel when you're under time pressure. It's that very negative but quite nervous energy, and it can really affect us all sort of quite badly. So I'm sure you can all relate to that. Right, so there's the agenda. So to kick off, let's take a look at why we'll always be busy. These are my top 5 reasons. So work expands to the time available. We often match our output to match the timeline we have. I'm sure everybody knows there's a deadline. I mean, at this particular moment in time, look, we're in the self-assessment sort of tax return season. Everybody knows that they have to submit it by the 31st. And how many of you deliver your self-assessment online on the 31st of January when you've actually had 9 months to prepare and submit it? So it's the same in so many elements of our business and our lives. Is we will do things to the timeline that we have available. Think about budgets or time allocated for jobs. When we have a budget or a time allocation, which can be totally arbitrary, it brings focus to how much time we have available for completion. The second one, there's no shortage of distractions. We might have a job that needs finishing, but lacks a clear deadline. So it sits waiting, and we find ourselves procrastinating, picking up and putting down other seemingly urgent interruptions or getting distracted. This morning was trying to prepare for this webinar and, making sure that I did few last minute blast outs, and my phone's going, I've got phone calls coming in, I've got people messaging, and it can get so distracting. And actually you end up getting really frustrated and really stressed. And I suddenly realized that none of that was my priority. And actually preparing for this webinar, so I ended up putting my phone in do not disturb mode. I put my watch on silent, I turned everything off. Our perception of busyness changes. It's all relative. For example, if you think of a high school student, they might have 1 hour of homework a day, but trying to fit this in with their other teenager tasks might make them feel very busy. A university student will experience an increased workload. Although they can produce more, they will probably won't feel any busier than when they were at high school. So, it's all relative. When they join a workforce, their workload increases again, and yet they still feel busy. It's all, it just changes throughout time, but it's all relative. The perception that busy equals successful. Think about how we respond to people who ask us how we're doing. Do you ever hear anyone saying, I'm bored, or I'm struggling to fill my day? I mean, I've actually been saying I'm bored quite a lot recently, but that's not for any lack of things to do. It's just that, the monotony of lockdown and, all of these restrictions can quite often sort of get to people. But I have never come across anyone who's ever said, I'm struggling to fill my day, ever. Even in lockdown, people were always able to find something to do. So there is quite a movement. I've seen a lot of it now on sort of social media of people sort of trying to, encourage the fact that just because you're busy doesn't mean that it's a good thing, and, stop promoting it is this sort of wonderful thing that, that shows that you're successful. And actually, burnout and working all hours and not sleeping enough just isn't healthy. So finally, we move on to being too busy is often an excuse. When we have more time, we don't necessarily do the things we wish to achieve. So for example, working on our business is so often put on the back burner. The client work that we have to do will often take priority, and we very much put working on our business, on, right down at the bottom of the priority list. Likewise, we put books aside to read and somehow never get around to reading them. How many unread books do you have waiting for that spare time? And I'm awful for that, but it's mostly because I buy all these books that I really want to read. And I would say one of the best things that has come out of lockdown is me sort of refinding my love for reading and books. And most of that is fiction. I need to sort of have a little escape outlet, I suppose. But I have started trying to, just read like a chapter a day or a chapter a week, or, depending on the book. And so there, that's basically that, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So basically, to sum it all up, we choose to work in the way that we do. So we have to make better choices about how to reclaim our time. So I'm going to go through some helpful mindsets to get us started. And some of these will be very familiar to a few, to some of you, all of you, I don't know. There's going to be some that you're familiar with and some that you've probably never heard of before. So the 7 habits of highly effective people, anyone has heard of Stephen Covey or this, or the 7 habits of highly effective people, is a very successful book and concept, I suppose. And he's now gone on to do lots of books on various different, the 7 habits, and it will be, for example, there's the 7 habits of highly successful accountants. I think, various different industry he's sort of specialized, I suppose, in various different ones. So the first habit, if we look down on the bottom left, the first habit is to be proactive. Make the choice to improve your life through the things you can influence. Then you've got the second one is to begin with the end in mind. Your values are a framework for decision making. Use them to set your goals and then focus on achieving them. And actually, I highlighted my goals, our core values at the beginning of this webinar. And actually, it is what we constantly bring ourselves back to. We say, are we educating, supporting, and empowering our clients? And we send out feedback surveys, for example, to see how we're doing against those values. And we make sure that we're checking that we live into them. The third thing is put first things first. Set your priorities and focus on them to avoid wasting time on unimportant and non-urgent tasks. So the first 3 habits relate to managing and reclaiming your time. So we're only going to be talking about these today. There's obviously the other ones, which are thinking, win-win, seeking first to understand and be understood, synergizing, and sharpening the saw. So those are the other parts, but we're only going to focus on this bottom left section here about managing yourself. Then we've got the Orbed model. Now, some of you might have heard me talk about this in the last sort of year and a half. I refer to it quite a lot, especially in my webinars and also when I'm talking to clients. Today, I want to link it specifically to the 7 habits that we just looked at, and more specifically, actually, the first habit, which is be proactive, and the second habit, which is start with the end in mind. Being proactive is about staying above the line. So we talk about above the line and below the line thinking here. So don't be a victim and say that there's nothing you can do about the lack of time you have. As confronting as it may sound, you're choosing to be as busy as you are. And more specifically, you're choosing to do the things that you're doing. So first of all, you have taken ownership of a situation that you have found yourself in, and you are attending this webinar. That is above the line thinking. You're not just sort of kind of going and blaming other people for your lack of time or a situation that you're in. You are taking ownership and responsibility for your lack of time, and you're going to be doing something about it. Quite often we can, in the very immediate aftermath of a negative situation that you find yourself in, we can go into the blame, excuse, deny, the below the line thinking. And that's very often our initial reaction, because we are human beings and that's how we are wired to think. And it's about how quickly you can come out of that below the line thinking and get above the line and start going, okay, what happened? How can I make this better? How can I improve on this? And really, there are times that I will try and find something or someone to blame, and actually there isn't anybody to blame. It's not a situation of blame. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about your time. It is only you who can have control over that, and only you can really sort of make those choices and take action. Stephen Covey's second habit of highly effective people also ties into Orbed. The habit is called starting with the end in mind, as I discussed already. And it's thinking about how you'd like people to describe you at your funeral, right? So without getting morbid, you can start being that person now. So, you know, it's that thing of, you know, what do you want people to remember you for? You know, then, you know, I think, you know, no one's ever going to, I mean, we're always explained as an accountant, nobody's ever going to say at my funeral, oh, Tamsin was great, she filed my tax return on time every year. You know, nobody cares. People aren't going to say, oh, you know, she was, you know, she was really good at dedicating herself. Well, no, they might say that you're good at dedicating yourself to work, but have a think about how you want to be remembered by the people that matter in your life, the people who are going to attend your funeral. You know, and it's a weird concept, but it works very well. And actually it really puts the people who matter to you most and the things that matter to you most in perspective. So stay above the line on this and stay firm on your time management so you can be the person that you want to be in your funeral. Moving on to something slightly cheerier. So the second mindset I want to share is Atomic Habits. And there's a brilliant book. I haven't bought it yet because I have enough books to read, having just said that I have all these books that are unread. But it's a brilliant book and I've heard a lot of amazing things. And these are, you know, this is just a very brief overview of his message, I suppose. The guy who wrote it is called James Clear. And I do highly recommend you get hold of the book or at least sort of look into it a little bit more. Again, this Atomic Habits really speaks directly to the starting with the end in mind concept. Building what he calls identity-based habits will enable you to better prioritize your time and achieve better results. So by focusing on who you need to be, your identity, and choosing habits consistent with that identity, your desired outcomes will flow more easily. If you know what matters to you and who you want to be and who you want to be to the people that matter, those things can then make those habits and those outcomes more easily. So from a reclaiming your time perspective, let's focus on your identity specifically. Say you want to be more proactive and focus on what you can control, but you find yourself distracted at times. Imagine you've set aside time, for example, to complete some of your business plan actions. Then an email or a text message pops up on your screen or your phone. This is called a cue. You can see there's a message and you want to read it. You want that dopamine hit, and that is called a craving. So you open the email and this is the response. You think to yourself, it's just a short email or a text from a client and you know the answer. So you quickly tap out a response and 10 minutes later, you hit send. This is the reward. You feel satisfied that you've responded to the client's email, and before you know it, you're on to the next email or the next text, and so on and so on. What we need to do is remove the cue in the first place and replace it with a different one. What if you switched off your email and phone notifications while working on your business? The cue could then be the handwritten to-do list of your business plan actions created a day in advance, if you're that organized. Then the craving becomes wanting to tick off each of the actions on your list. The response is to then spend an hour on your business plan actions, and the reward is that you get to have a coffee afterwards and scroll through your social media or your emails. So we need a mindset that reflects our identity. Who do we need to be to control our time? Only you can adjust your behavior. And if you want to reclaim your time, you've got to do something different. So now we're going to look at what you can do differently using the best time management model ever written. And if anybody follows me on Instagram, I did a little teaser of this a couple of weeks ago. So this is known as the Achiever Matrix, also created by Stephen Covey. And by the way, if you haven't read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, put it on your reading list and read it. It's awesome. I read it several years ago and I could probably do with rereading it. But basically, in a nutshell, this matrix reflects that we all live in a time-pressured world with multiple overlapping commitments. Urgency is no longer reserved for special occasions. So separating tasks into these 4 quadrants helps us to better manage a flood of responsibilities, do excellent work, and maintain a positive frame of mind. It directly reflects the 3rd habit of Covey's Highly Effective People: put first things first. Now, I have to remind myself of this matrix all the time. And it's generally when I'm up to my eyeballs in work and I can't really see the wood for the trees. So first of all, we need to spend less time working in the urgent quadrants. So that's the ones on the left, and more time working in quadrant 2, the quadrant of quality. This is the quadrant of planning, prevention, and innovation. This is where we'll improve our processes and where we are most productive. It's also where we can prevent a number of important things from becoming urgent and falling into that disruptive first quadrant, the quadrant of urgency. Now, I know 100% of business owners will have periods of time throughout a year where they are in that urgent and important quadrant, that top left one, that red one. That's the firefighting. That's where you feel like you're never really getting anywhere because you are being reactive and you are constantly chasing your tail and you're never really getting anywhere. So what you need to do is get out of that and get into that top right one, the quadrant of quality. We also need to assess what things that are not important are distracting us from working in the quadrant of quality. Okay, so that bottom left one and that bottom right one. I'm sure we've all been in the quadrant of waste, the bottom right one, many a time. But that quadrant, that bottom left, the quadrant of deception is, you think this is often where our time is lost. It's this bottom left one. It's not always the quadrant of waste, because the quadrant of waste, we're aware of it being a drain on our time. It's this quadrant of deception on the bottom left. What strategies can we use to reclaim some of that time spent on non-important things? So the first strategy to reclaim time is to utilize the productivity pyramid. So let's take a look. The pyramid looks at time versus your return on the time invested. Okay, so you've got 5 stages and strategies to maximize your return. The first stage is improve. This is where you can start working on mastering your expertise or working better. Next is increase. This is where you get more people to do what you're doing by delegating and outsourcing. And even the tiniest of businesses can do this. You don't have to have a huge team of of employees. You can utilize freelancers, virtual assistants. There are multiple opportunities here. Then we have to invest. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's technology. You have to invest in technology to scale. Buy and subscribe to systems and software. That's where you're going to get some of your time back. Then we can invent our own systems or technology to create valuable IP or an app, for example. And then finally, we can innovate, which in its simple form is working on better things. So whereabouts do you think you are on the productivity pyramid? Just have a little think about where you are on that. I think I'm pretty much in the increase, well, probably a little bit in between the increase and invest. We've spent a lot of time investing in systems and software over the last couple of years, and our team, but I'm not quite at the top of the invest section just yet. So could you free up some time by employing others or contracting out some of your work on the second level? Could you get a VA to deal with some of your emails or your more sort of basic admin tasks? Could you hire a bookkeeper to keep your bookkeeping up to date. So that's one thing less to worry about. What systems and software solutions could you utilize to free up your time and increase your efficiency? Again, most of my clients will have access to some sort of app which will save their time with their bookkeeping. What other things can you use in your business that will free up your time? Improved systemization not only frees up your time, it also allows you to grow your business without increasing risk or workload for you. And really, that's where, for me personally, we've spent our time is building these systems and processes in place so that we can scale effectively. Those systems and those processes and that software isn't going to change just because we've doubled in size. We have everything in place now to scale sustainably and effectively. And it's taken a long time to get here. Are there other things that you could be working on to derive a better return on your time investment? The pandemic, the COVID-19 environment has forced so many of us to think about how we can adapt, innovate, re-engineer or reinvent the way we work. There are so many different things that can be done to help reclaim some of your time, make your workload more streamlined and more efficient. We're happy to discuss how to use this productivity pyramid to your advantage. Sometimes a fresh set of eyes looking over your unique situation opens up opportunities that you may not have seen before. I speak to an independent mentor on a regular basis, and sometimes it's just really helpful to have somebody else who can look at things with a fresh perspective and who isn't working, churning it out day in, day out. Combining your expertise with ours is also a great way to help distinguish the wood for the trees and come up with a better way of working. Sometimes when you're just in it and you're constantly doing things and doing things and doing things, it can seem difficult to actually get out of that situation. So now we're moving on to our second strategy. So stop working with the wrong people. Try to avoid working with people who don't pay your invoices on time, who treat your team badly, who don't live into your core values and are unreliable. Get them out. Opening of the door of opportunities to the wrong people frees up your time to spend with better customers or clients, and your team and yourself and your family and everybody around you will thank you for it. Is there someone who comes to mind that you'd like to open the door of opportunities to? Have a think about it. The next strategy for reclaiming some time is to run better meetings. This might not, apply to all of you or any of you or many of you, and it will totally depend on your business. But some of you will run more meetings than others. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a boardroom meeting style thing. Think about all of the situations that you're in meetings. There is value in having regular meetings if they're done well. Whether these are 10-minute toolbox meetings over coffee and muffins or meeting with prospective customers, ensure they're efficient and are valuable to everyone attending. Poorly planned meetings are consistently a top 10 time waster. Here are our rules of the game for running effective meetings. Set a time limit and stick to it. If it's a toolbox meeting, make sure it's no more than 10 minutes. If it's a monthly team meeting, set the timing at 45 minutes. Check the time as you go through the meeting and remind everyone of the time agreed if it looks like the meeting will drag on. Sometimes you need to pull those people back in who've gone off on a little tangent. Report prior to the meeting. Consider using a weekly team member report so you can see what your team have been working on, what challenges they have, the support they need, and what they have planned for this week. This will increase efficiency dramatically. I've got a team member weekly report template that I can share with anyone if you'd like a copy. Number 3, set a regular rhythm for team meetings. For example, a daily or weekly huddle of no more than 10 minutes. Having these meetings schedules means that your team will remain fully informed and you won't be repeating yourself to every team member. Likewise, you're providing a forum for feedback, so you should get less interruptions during the working day. 4, clear purpose and agenda. Now, this applies to client and team meetings. Make sure that every meeting has a purpose and a predefined agenda. This encourages attendees to prepare, and it minimizes the risk that the meeting will go off on a tangent and soak up unnecessary time. If an item comes up that isn't on the agenda, set it aside another time to deal with that matter. Now, I send out an agenda prior to all of my sort of main big meetings, and I specifically have at the end of the thing, is there anything else that you would like to discuss at this time? So that I'm aware ahead of time what the client wants to talk about. Actions, not lengthy discussions. If you've received team member reports prior to the meeting and you have an agenda, then you should be able to make decisions quickly. If there needs to be a more detailed discussion, delegate it to the most appropriate people and set a separate meeting so you're not wasting everybody's time. It only needs to be the relevant people. Record your agreed actions from a meeting, who, what, and by when. Finally, accountability. This is the check-in on the actions recorded from prior meetings. Having follow-up or regular meeting rhythms make sure that the tasks get done. There's no point agreeing tasks and then not following up on them. So how well do your meetings stack up, and what can you do to improve the effectiveness of your meeting? Now, as I said, that was very much focused on team meetings, which might not apply to you, but actually a lot of those actually relate to client meetings or any meetings of any sort. Oh, there we go. Strategy 4. The 4 strategies to help you take control of your time. Do a 10 hats organizational review. So the 10 hats is an essential mindset for business structure, leadership, and management. And this applies to even solopreneurs or sole business owners or whatever. You're working on your own and you don't have a team. This applies to you as well. It clearly defines what roles in your business are operational versus those that are strategic. It also helps you draw accountability lines to allow for better planning, reporting, delegation, and time management, as well as helping assess resourcing gaps. It's important to ensure a business is sustainable, scalable, and ultimately saleable. Okay. The 10 hats reflects the 10 departments that exist in any business, big or small. Every department needs one leader, but remember that responsibility and doing are not the same. So the leader may delegate the work, but ultimately they're the final decision makers. So how many hats are you currently wearing in your business? It's quite likely that you're wearing all 10 of them. What hats should you consider removing to free up your capacity to work on more important things? Quite often, the first one is administration and technology. It can often be finance and marketing. Those are the 3 most common ones in my experience that people will outsource and delegate first. Doing a 10 hats organizational review will analyze the hats that you're wearing well and those that are perhaps not your natural strength or are being neglected. We can form a plan to help you ensure you take some of those hats off. This is a service that we provide, and I'll talk about that a little bit further down the line. So most specifically, the benefits of a 10 hats organizational review are clarity of individual roles and how they work together, improved delegation and personal development for your team members, clear accountability lines, identifying resourcing gaps and outsourcing opportunities, and providing for scaling up without blowing you apart. So let's briefly consider some examples of contracting out or outsourcing to help you reclaim your time. Firstly, marketing is an obvious option. Not every business can justify employing a full-time marketing person to create and implement their marketing plan, but it might be that you utilize some automation tools, some scheduling software. It might be that you get somebody to manage that for you and, create the content and schedule it for you. Finance is another common hat to outsource. Do you really need to be doing your VAT returns in the evenings after work and doing your daily, all of your bookkeeping? HR is also an obvious one. It can be expensive to get it wrong. And let's be honest, not many of us aspire to be HR experts. It's, a minefield. IT and admin, as I mentioned, are also other areas where outsourcing could minimize risk and save you time and money. Strategy number 5. I'm blowing through all of these super quick because I'm aware of our time. And I think I must have waffled a little bit too much at the beginning. There are many misconceptions around delegation. Delegation is a skill that should be mastered, and it is not just flinging a task at someone and hoping they'll do it right. Effective delegation requires communication. You have to assess the task and you have to delegate it to the right person, providing clear support as they learn how to complete this new task. You have to communicate the parameters, both verbally and in either an email or a written procedure. This is where sort of operations manuals and things come into place. Ask your team member to repeat back the task instructions to ensure nothing was lost in translation and set a clear deadline for completion. Articulating the project objectives will help the team member further understand your expectations. But most importantly, set some time to review the outcomes together, as it's unlikely they'll get it right the first time. And that's where sometimes when we first start delegating, we get worried because we can almost do it quicker ourselves because we have to follow up so much. But this is the effective delegation. Don't be surprised or offended if, with their fresh perspective, they find a more efficient way of achieving the desired outcome. This is often a happy byproduct of delegation, along with improved trust, respect, communication, and productivity, which all leads to improved profit and happiness for you, your team, and your customers. However, many people confuse delegation with abdication. And abdication is where you set your team member up to fail, basically, ultimately damaging culture, communication, productivity, and so on. And this is where things can go really wrong. If you just throw something at them, you don't check on the outcomes, you don't give clear instructions. It's where everything just starts falling apart, and that person's quite likely to end up resenting you. And nobody wants to feel that. So just remember successful delegation, and remember those things there in the top left. So I was going to do another word cloud poll, but we're running short on time, and I appreciate that it is valuable to you. So what will you do with the extra time that you can create by utilizing these tools that I've shared and these mindsets? It might just be a small reward. Have a think, what are you going to do? It could just be, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to take a walk with my family or friends. Anything that is important to you. Go back to that, sort of starting with the end in mind. Think about what you want to be remembered for at your funeral. So 5 things that we recommend are committing to teaching others what you've learned and further consolidating your knowledge. Spending time sharpening your saw. Now, obviously, Kofi goes into that more in his book, so I do highly recommend getting that book. Plan more effectively and be more commercial. Create better habits, and of course, take time for yourself to ensure your health and well-being. This year has been fun for that, and I think it has enabled a lot of people to put things into perspective. And at times, we can all feel the water rising around us. Stress, pressure, lack of time, it can damage our ability to maintain perspective on what really matters, both in the workplace and in our personal lives. And sometimes the business will take precedence over your personal life, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But just make sure that you are working on what is important to you and what matters to you. We know we must make time for our wellness, or we'll likely be forced to make time for our illness. If you don't look after yourself, you're gonna get ill one way or another. Instead of trying to fit our important me time activities amongst our work commitments, flip it on its head, bed those non-negotiable activities into our schedule, and fit the work stuff in around them. There's a lot of evidence that if we do this, we're more likely to turn up and be more productive because we're putting ourselves first. So your next steps. Assess where your time is being underutilized. This will help you become more conscious of the daily choices you make that impact your capacity. Get clear on the habits you wish to create, the ones you know will improve your productivity and focus. Planning for sustainable improvement starts with you and the leaders in your business. Identify your 3 most important actions. We'll be asking you to record these in your feedback from this webinar so that we can be sure that this hour has been powerful for you in bringing about real change. I don't think I've got the feedback survey set up to go out immediately after this webinar. However, it will be sent in the recording, which will be sent out tomorrow. And we would really appreciate you completing that feedback survey. It will take 2 minutes, not even that, but be less than that. And if you log your 3 most important actions that you can do to actually do something about and take responsibility and reclaim some of that time, it will be really helpful for you. Focus on what you can do instead of worrying about what is out of our control. That's one of the biggest things that I have learned personally this year. There's just so much that is out of our control. So all we can do is focus on what we can do. And finally, we are here for you and want to help. So that takes me on to my next slide. Now, I haven't put in the prices here because actually they all depend on your business. Every business is different. Every person is different. So our accountability coaching is a quarterly coaching session it starts around £150 a month for 4 sessions per year. And with that, we will go through, we will set a 90-day plan with actions to help achieve your goals that you have, and they will all tie into your sort of bigger goals and your vision and so on. These coaching sessions are really, really helpful and really valuable. As I mentioned before, it can really help to have somebody else with an independent perspective, looking at things with a fresh set of eyes and bring in some new ideas to help you take your business forward. The 10 Hats organizational review will very much depend on the size of your business, who's involved and so on. So again, if you're interested in just finding out a little bit more, I'm perfectly happy to just send over some details about what entails and the prices that's involved in that. There's absolutely no obligation to buy from that. However, it will start at around £300 plus VAT, and it will kind of go up, but it kind of depends on the complexity of the situation. And then finally, we have the Achiever Matrix worksheet. So the Achiever Matrix worksheet will basically help you work through all of your tasks and things and actually identify, what's urgent, what's important, what's not urgent, important, and so on. So we can send that out to you for free. I will put that in the feedback survey tomorrow as well. So if you want a copy of that, I will email out individually those sheets. And finally, there's a complimentary meeting. So we offer our future clients a discovery meeting. At the moment, we're actually pausing them so that we can effectively service our existing customers, but they can be booked in for February. So again, I will put in a discovery call link in the follow-up email that will be sent out tomorrow. Finally, parting thought. Listen to the wise words of Yoda. My kids love Star Wars. They love talking to me about Star Wars every day, and I've watched a couple of the films. Listen to the wise words of Yoda and commit to reclaiming some of your time. No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try. So make a simple plan today to find at least 3 actions that you'll take as a result of today's webinar. As I said, I'm going to be sending out that feedback survey tomorrow. So that's not like, anything sort of huge. It's just sort of understanding how we can improve things, other topics that we can deliver on, and also helping you to sort of actually identify those 3 actions that you're going to take. They might be personal actions, or they might be for your business, or it might be a combination of both, but give each of them an owner. And again, if it's just you, it might well be that it's just you doing all of those 3 actions, and also set a completion date. So put in that deadline. As we all know, we work to those timelines in our business, and we will always utilize those things. So put in a completion date and make sure that you actually achieve those things by that date. And remember, again, if you need our support, we are here for you. So finally, thank you very much for making the time to attend this webinar. We appreciate the time is really valuable, and especially at this time of year for a lot of businesses, it's just crazy. After the year that we have had, everything's all over the place. So thank you very much. And, I do really appreciate you making the time to attend this webinar. As I mentioned, there is going to be a brief exit survey, which will be sent with the email tomorrow, the follow-up email. This enables us to improve and get feedback on what is working well and what else you'd like to see from us. But finally, I hope that we have given you plenty of ideas to ponder and some clear next steps for you and your business. So thank you very much, and take care, everybody.